Today we're going to start to put the final touches on the home stretch of this course. I don't think it'll be the exact total ending, but it's definitely a culmination of pretty much all the lessons that I've given you so far. And I'm going to go through maybe a 5, 6, 7 lesson stretch of what exactly you would do when you walk into a radio station as the new PD. And I am going to be as minute in this as possible to tell you exactly what you need to do. But we have to start here, and this may be the most important lesson that I ever give you, because if you can grasp this one, you will be a good PD, hands down. Hey Buckaroos, welcome back to Music.com Academy, and this is a really important lesson. It's going to be a little odd to you. I'm going to try to make it as simple as I can, but it is about audio and understanding music and how it relates to a radio station, and that is incredibly difficult to describe. I sort of alluded, decently to this in one of the earlier lessons, of which I forget the number right now, but I'll put it up in maybe somewhere up in this corner, whatever that lesson was. You can go back for it. But what this is about scales, okay? And all radio stations have scales of music, and I'm mainly talking music, but this will, as you'll see as we get into all of the things that you need to do when you walk in as a new PD. It has a lot more to do than just music, but music is the easiest way I can maybe teach this because it permeates into everything. Research, music, personalities, audio, it goes into everything. But you have to kind of get this core competency down, okay? And that is scales. Now, every market, every radio station, every person has a personal musical DNA. Now, I know what mine is. It took me a lot of years to kind of figure this out. I wasn't like I was super trying to figure it out, but you might want to actually really try to figure it out to speed everything up. I just sort of came to a conclusion of this after a while. My musical DNA is I have a pop CHR type of DNA. I like musical songs that have good lyrics. The lyrics are interesting. The melodies go where my mind wants them to go. Occasionally I'll get maybe an odd thing where it's like, ooh, that was pretty weird. And I like it. But for the most part, I have a really plain, normal, everyday ear. There's a lot of stuff like Pink Floyd and other things. Most of those songs I don't get. Orchestral rock, don't get it. I mean, some of that stuff, Jethro Tull, bores me to death. I can listen to, I'm snoozing like immediately. So that's what I have. I have a pop CHR taste. That's my musical DNA with a heavy leaning of R&B. Pop R&B, medium R&B, and even heavily into some pretty decent black R&B. And some hip hop too. But basically, it's, mainstream R&B. That's what I really like. So you marry those two together, and that's my ear. Luckily for me, from a programming point of view, it turned out to be a pretty basic ear that's the way most markets go, and that's the way most people's ears are. They're in somewhere in that ballpark. Again, some guys really like rock, but, they tend to be the hit songs. Those are the ones in that spectrum that sort of make it. So a lot of this lesson is about musical DNA and how you can start to figure out your own and how you get there. As I mentioned, every market has its own DNA. Usually it's pretty much the same in most markets. The difference is the ratios of different types of music may be larger in one market than they are in another. Now, after we get through this, I'm going to try to explain it to you. A big key of this is after you find out what your musical DNA is, you need to marry it to the market itself that you're in, and to some degree marry it to the format that you're going to be programming, because they are different. Like when I was doing the jazz station, and I had no idea of this, there are probably 25 different versions of jazz. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. And, if you go into rock, there's, I don't know, probably 10 immediately come to mind, different types of rock, corporate rock, soft rock, hard rock, metal, and all of that sort of stuff. Every single format has that type of stuff in it. For today, I'm going to be trying to show you how to actually figure out a market, the stations that you're going to be competing with, your own radio station, where it fits in the scheme of things, its DNA, and where it needs to be. And if it needs to go somewhere, that will be coming up in the, in the other lessons as I get, really intricate and super specific about doing things. I'm going to tell you how to move it and how to get there and all of that sort of stuff and all the myriad of things that really intertwine in addition to all this music stuff, of which I'm going to be showing you today, which is, all about scales. So when I say scales, what I mean is, I mean this kind of stuff here, and what you're seeing over here. These are the things, there's just there's many I could get on one page. I mean, I didn't want to keep changing the graphic here over and over and over again, because there's literally probably hundreds of these type of things. But, these are the main ones that you need to worry about and figure out the tempo and where stations lean. Do they lean rock? Do they lean alternative? Do they lean urban? Do they lean hip hop? They CHR, what are the rotations, all of that type of stuff. And there's some other things that enter into this too that are a little bit not so clear. How safe is the music on particular stations? Does it seem like somebody's actually in charge of the music, or does it seem like it's sort of haphazard? And, and it doesn't hold one uniform sound hour after hour after hour after hour. Does it seem like maybe it's 2 or 3 different stations going at once, where, nights sound dramatically different? I don't mean a little bit, which is normal. I mean dramatically different than, say, midday. And maybe midday seems very different than mornings or afternoons. I mean, that would scream to me that somebody's not in charge. They don't know what they're doing, probably. Now, maybe they're setting it up exactly that way, and in some instances that makes sense, but most of the time, usually it doesn't. Because it's kind of like having a restaurant and serving, changing the menu, every 4 hours. When somebody wants to come in and go, hey, I thought chicken was your specialty. Now you're doing fish. I don't get it. So, there's a lot of that goes on. Now I'm going to show you some pictures, and I mean literally photographs, and talk about them a little bit and relate them to music. I want to show you something that Paul McCartney does when he writes songs. Take a look at this. This is how McCartney lays out the arrangements for his songs. I had a conversation with Bobby Goldsboro. We were at some place where he was doing an art exhibit, and he does a few of his songs in a similar way. Not all of them, but I remember Summer the first time he was specifically mentioning that he wanted it to feel like summertime at the beach, so he was picturing it, and he was picturing the colors, and he was trying to get the instruments to make those colors in his mind. Stevie Wonder does the same thing. I saw him on an interview where he mentioned that he does it. So there's, again, everything is not so simple. So some of the stuff I'm going to be showing you, it's going to be, in colors, and other parts are not going to be. But I just thought, you'd find the Paul McCartney thing pretty interesting. Lastly, before we hit the computer, I want to make this really, really clear, because somebody may be looking at this and going, well, that's not going to work. I'm telling you that it will work. And what will work is, this is all about you. This is not about me. This is not about somebody else. This is not about a national PD. This is not about a corporate PD. This is about you programming your radio station and your ear, because everybody's ear filters things differently. And everybody's scale of what we're going to go through, because I'm going to go through scales of music and stuff. Your scale is going to be different than mine, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, because at the end of the day, as long as you are scaling everything, you can take your radio station and move it to where it needs to be. And I'll explain that at the end of this as clearly, hopefully, as I can. I'm just going to describe lemonade to you, and hopefully you'll get it. You can't have 6 people with their hand on the scale. It can only be 1. And, that's what makes for a good radio station. You want a lot of input for sure, but ultimately you have to take that input, work it into your scale of what you're thinking and what you're trying to do, and then make a decision, and it's a one-person decision. You get other people telling you what to do, and that's a recipe for screw up big time. 100%, absolutely. So anyway, so let's get through this. Let's go over to the computer, and I'll take you through this stuff. Let's make believe that you're looking at a classic hit station right now. That's what this picture is, this beach with a palm tree, okay? Blue is mainstream hit rock, stuff that's been played on Top 40. The teal water is perhaps familiar hit album cuts. And sand is hit R&B CHR songs that fit with rock well. And the green palm tree is, I don't know, let's just say maybe it's alternative gold hits. Doesn't really matter how you describe them to yourself, as I mentioned. But that's what you hear when you listen to a radio station, what you're looking at. So another radio station may look like this. Blue is mainstream hit rock, the same. Teal Water is gone now, and so are the album cuts. The Sand is hit R&B CHR songs that fit with the rock well, but there's a lot more green and more alternative gold hits in this. Now let's go to another one. Blue, in this instance, is mainstream hit rock. Water is slightly lighter shade of rock. Perhaps it's soft rock. That's what this classic hit station does. A lot more sand and hit R&B CHR songs in this one. Tons of them, actually. So, again, a different feel. Is this a classic hit station? I would say no, it's not. Again, things just pop out to you when you look at them in different ways. For today, I want you to learn how to see and hear the shades. Let's take this off pictures and put it onto a scale. Now, this is something that I'm showing you. You don't need to literally do this. Also, although research can do this for you sometimes, I usually do this. If you've done this enough times over enough years, this sort of just forms in your head. You just get a feel of this. But to try to describe it to you, I think, out of my head is going to be almost impossible. So I'm going to put it into a different form. This is simply a scale of going from one side to the other. One side is current and the other side is gold. So just picture this as a radio station of some sort of a format, and it's either playing all 100% current music or it's playing 100% gold music, somewhere in between. So let's just make believe that this is a station that's pretty much playing that. Now, probably what it's going to be is a CHR radio station, because that's what CHRs typically do. Let's move over to a different format. Now, Hot AC is going to be playing more gold to some degree. That blue dot could be anywhere on that line. If we move to an AC, you're definitely going to have more gold on an AC radio station. But here's where this gets really critical for your ear, and it's really, really important that you can discern the differences. You may be listening to a radio station, an AC radio station, and it feels like the amount of gold that they're playing is where you see the blue dot. But in reality, physically, they may be actually playing this much gold. Okay, this is what they're actually playing, and I'll show you, in the next lessons how to pick this part out, but they may be playing this, but it actually, looks like there's more toward current because of the age of the gold that they're playing. In simple mechanical terms, the gold that they may be playing, let's just say out of 12 songs an hour, they may be playing 10 gold songs, but many of them might be recurrents or maybe only over the last 4 years. That's going to give a different feel of the amount of gold that they're playing. Conversely, they may be doing like no recurrence and they're playing a lot of songs out of the 80s when they play their gold. It's going to make the station feel older, even though they might be playing the exact amount of content of gold, those same 10 songs out of 12 songs. Moving on, let's go to a classic hit station. Okay, here's one that would be playing, all gold. Here's a classic rock. It's going to be pretty much doing the same thing, but on a different scale of CHR hit rock songs that were played on CHR on a scale like that versus rock songs, and rock album cuts where many of them did not cross over onto CHR. There's a lot of, most of the Zeppelin stuff never got played on CHR. They're big songs. Same thing with Pink Floyd. And Ozzy, I don't think anything of Ozzy was ever played on CHR that actually mattered. There's a lot of big rock acts that never got played on CHR, so therefore they're not hit rock songs. They're just great rock songs, okay? On a scale of that, you're going to see classic rock end up looking different than a classic hits radio station. To go back a bit of what I was talking about, this is another scale that you can make up. Again, you can make up any scale you want. All you're trying to do is just figure this out for yourself. You don't have to impress anybody. It could be very old gold that they're playing. They have a certain amount of it versus recent gold. And you're going to put this on some sort of a scale, either literally like I'm showing you, or you're just going to kind of, keep track of it in your head, and maybe you're just writing some notes like, hey, this station seems like it plays more older gold than the other similar AC radio stations or classic hit stations, or whatever you're trying to get a handle on. Another obvious thing to keep track of is up tempo and down tempo. Like where are they? This comes in handy where sometimes you might be looking at CHR radio stations. Certainly now, I know as I listen to CHR radio stations now, it becomes really, really apparent to me that If I was building one right now, I would look for way more tempo than almost all CHR radio stations nowadays play. It also, on a 1 to 10 scale, most of them feel like they're playing 4, 5, 6 tempos, where I would be, out of 10, where I would be looking for the average, not to be 4, 5, or 6 of all the songs played. I'd be looking for like 7s and 8s and 9s. I'd want tempo for almost all the songs. So if you get a bunch of CHRs where maybe you're competing with, say, 2 other ones in the market, and they're both sort of mid-tempo type CHRs, I'd be looking to go the other way. And every market can be a little bit different. Ultimately same problem, but also same opportunity possibly, because maybe, another market is even more down-tempo, and it leaves you more room to be the up-tempo CHR, or whatever the format happens to be. Or the opposite. Maybe they're all have too much tempo and you want to slow it down. You want to, make it so, maybe it's a soft AC that's kind of mellow, kind of like a love song station. Again, there's so many scales that you can do. You can do soft to hard. You can do mainstream to urban. If you're looking at a CHR, or maybe you're looking at an AC station and you're thinking, geez, there's a lot of AC radio stations in this market, but there's no urban AC in this market. I think I can make an urban leaning AC in this market and do really, really well because everybody else is going the opposite direction. Again, if you map out the stations that you're going to compete with, or just simply kind of listen to them a lot and get a feel for what they do, looking at all these various aspects, usually the answer becomes incredibly clear as to where you need to make your radio station go. Here's one that I like to do. I kind of do it in my own head. It's just one of those things that just sort of forms. I've never done a scale like this, but you just sort of keep track of what stations seem like they're creative, they're adventurous, they play music where you go, ooh, wow, I didn't expect that. And I don't mean a lot of them. I mean just enough to kind of keep your interest going versus the ones that are just expected. It's the usual stuff. On a similar vein, you got the personality or somebody doing mainly liners. What kind of a station is it? How do they let the jocks go? Do the jocks have seemingly a pretty good free rein to really entertain and to do really cool stuff and stick out? Or is it mainly liners? And they're, even if there are no liners, are the jocks kind of not all that good and they're basically doing nothing? They bring nothing to the table. What kind of station are you competing against? Now, a question you might have in your mind, rightly so, is what do you do with these scales? I mean, you've asked me to do a scale of alternative. You've asked me to do a scale of urban and rock and, a tempo and a bunch of other things, current to gold. What do I do with these? Well, in your mind, you can start putting these together, or you could do it on paper. I'm going to do it here, on this scale. I'm just going to put a few of them. You could probably do a whole bunch of them. But let's just say this is a particular market and there are 3 CHR radio stations, or there's 2 CHRs and 1 hot AC radio station. And that's these 3 dots that you're looking at. And now we got 2 scales going at once, okay? Up tempo and down tempo. So taking it for the tempo part alone, it's like, well, all right, they're all sort of mid-tempo stations. They're not slow and they're not super up. And they tend to lean, now looking for left to right scale, they tend to lean pretty current. Again, if you were building a CHR, I'd look at that and go, I think I'd like to be up here. I'd like to have a lot more tempo and be on the same basic scale of currents to gold, but I'd want to be, I'd want to have more tempo. Or I'd want to add more gold. Maybe I'd add a lot more recurrence in. Maybe the gold is maybe going back maybe 6, 7, 8 years, but I'd have more of it. So it still feels like a current radio station, but it's a lot more familiar. Or I'd want to push it even more and take it out even farther. Almost a reverse. It might be, to me, a really up-tempo classic hits radio station that I mask to make it feel like a CHR. I've got jingles. I've got CHR everything, CHR presentation. I got all of that going on, but I don't play that many current songs. I do play some currents so that you as you're listening, go, well, this can't be a classic hit station because they play current music. You can really screw with people's heads. And by these type of scales and getting a handle on the market, what other stations do, you can have a pretty clear picture of where you can go, where the opportunities are. It's kind of like playing football. All of a sudden, the blockers all of a sudden open a big hole in the line and you're going, wow, I can run right through this. Let's try this on a different scale. Alternative on the top, urban on the bottom, classic hits obviously on the left, and classic rock on the right. So when I'm saying in my mind in this, again, your mind can be completely different and that's fine. But to me, classic rock, if something's 100% classic rock, to me that has a feel of, I'm going to be hearing AC/DC songs that were never played on CHR. I'm going to be hearing Back in Black. I'm going to be hearing Ozzy songs. I'm going to be hearing Metallica. I'm going to be hearing AC/DC's Dirty Deeds and other songs that just will never be played on, on CHR back in the day, okay? Classic hits would be the exact opposite of that. It's like Foreigner and Eagles and Aerosmith songs, all the hit songs, rock songs that were played on CHR radio. That to me is what a classic hits radio station is, pure, in my mind. Now let's add in this market, from those two classic hits radio stations that I was showing you, let's add in a classic rock radio station. And it's looking like this. That's the yellow one. So you're staring at this and you're going, what do I do here? Well, all right, you could do a classic hits radio station and go way over on the other scale and get away from those. Or you could take it, move it toward R&B. So now this would be one that's actually picking up some of the really strong urban songs of classic hits. Now, you're not only getting maybe the obvious Stevie Wonder, some of those cuts that got played on rock radio back at the time, but maybe you're picking up some other R&B stuff. You're picking up a lot of the Motown things. You're picking up Prince. You're picking up Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Teddy Pendergrass, that type of stuff. Or you may stare at that and go, you know what? Again, looking at the other radio stations in the market, which I'm not showing you right now because this is going to get too complicated, you might decide, you know what? I think an urban AC is the way to go here, which would be what you're looking at there. It would be an urban R&B pretty much right down at the bottom of the scale. It's right over by the classic hits thing. But what I mean by this is, to me, as I stare at this is you are very, very, playing urban songs, but they're all hit urban songs from the past. You're playing urban gold pretty much almost 100%. That's what you're doing. So you would be an urban gold radio station or an urban AC radio station. So this is what I mean by trying to get a handle on what the stations in your market are doing. And again, I can't stress this enough. Your scale can be anything you want it to be as you're going through this, whatever makes it easy for you to understand the market. What will become important, though, that you do need to kind of get in sync, you need to get in sync with your scale and the market scale, which they probably will be different. But that's not that hard. It's pretty easy. It's, it's kind of almost like, dealing with lemonade. And, let me tell you what that's about. All right, let's do the lemonade thing. So let's describe lemonade. Now, you may say, what's the perfect lemonade? And that's 2 teaspoons of sugar. I may say, I like 1 teaspoon of sugar. Somebody else might want 4 or 5. Somebody might want 3. So you're describing the sweetness of sugar, right? And there's 4 people, 4 different answers. Each person has their own frame of reference, their own taste. If you ask them to describe Pepsi and Coke, or Pepsi and ginger ale, or Pepsi and coconut water, you're going to probably get similar answers because their taste isn't going to change. It's going to hold true. The same is true for a market. A market's taste won't really change very much either. It's going to be whatever it is. Say you, or even the other people, because I think anybody can do this, but let's just say you find out and you realize that the market, it likes 1 teaspoon of sugar for lemonade. Its musical tastes are X, okay? But your tastes are 2 teaspoons of sugar. It's not at that point going to be very hard for you to morph your taste down to match the market of 1 teaspoon, okay? To you, it's like, oh, okay, then that means it's not all that sweet. In musical terms, it might be, this market rocks harder than I thought, than I would have thought it would. This market leans CHR more. This is more of a country market than I thought it was, than my particular taste. So once you know what your musical DNA is and figure it out, and then figure out to your tastes, again, your particular taste, how you view it, the other radio stations in the market on a whole bunch of levels, that we went through, once you understand that, you can then very easily alter your radio station to fit into the market. You can, if you don't have any research, just, when you really trust your gut, which I do because I know what my tastes are, if I don't have any research, I can usually put the radio station where it needs to be, just by pure gut feel alone. Almost always that works. I can't remember where it actually hadn't worked other than when I first started out being a PD before I started to learn these things. Now I trust my gut. However, and this is a big one, however, once I decide where, okay, my gut is telling me the radio station needs to be, there. I need to be this tempo. I need to be leaning musically this way. It's got to be, whatever it turns out to be. I then take that as a supposition. It's a preposition that, let me find out if this is true, because if we have research, then I'm going to ask the research people to dig that out. I want to be searching for that. It's not to the exclusion of everything else. Like I want to, know a whole bunch of stuff, but I do not, under any circumstances, ever want any of the research questions to not dig into that area that I want to go. Again, I'm not pushing it that way. I just want to make sure that, it's research that, at the end of it, you go like, oh man, they didn't really search that. I don't have a clear answer. I want a clear answer on that, basically, where my gut tells me it wants to go. I want a really clear answer on that. And that's imperative. And we'll go through that as I get into the other lessons of the specifics of being a PD walking into a radio station brand new, assessing the station, assessing the market, assessing everything of where you want to be with that radio station. So that's what's going to be coming up in the other lessons. We're in Florida at the moment, and we're going to be heading back, and because of the heart thing and and other stuff. And although I'm fine, I feel fine, but normally we would take one of those super long long drive 12-hour day things to get home. I'm going to stretch it out a bit. There's other stuff, the packing and other things that we're going to be doing. So I'm going to take a 2-week break on this. So there's not going to be any lessons for a couple weeks. And then I will come back and we will go down that path of you're the new PD. You are walking into a radio station. Every single thing that I can possibly tell you that you need to do. And they will be definitely tying in everything that I've taught you up to this point. So, a big lesson today, and I hope you really understand it because it's so important. As always, if you like this, subscribe. I think we're up to 535, 540 subscribers, 540 PDs, or people who want to be PDs, which is really super encouraging and really, really nice. Hit the like button, get the notifications every time there's a new lesson. Again, 2 weeks from now is when there'll be a new one. And I guess that's it. Are we done? Yeah? Okay. All right. Well, see ya.